This is Cruise Radio.
I cruise a lot, and I always sail with travel insurance. You should too. Get a free quote today at tripinsurance.com.
Here we go.
Broadcasting from the tripinsurance.com studios in Jacksonville, Florida. This is Cruise Radio.
Hey, how's it going? My name is Doug Parker. Thank you so much for checking out this episode of Cruise Radio. Very happy to have you here, my friend. A review of Celebrity Silhouette today, a 3-night cruise from Port Everglades. So Matt's going to check in with us in a little bit and share that experience. Also, staff writer Richard Sims on deck with this week's cruise news. And as always, cruise news today found just opposite of this channel here. It's the daily 2-minute news briefs Monday through Friday to get you caught up what you need to know in the cruise world. All right, staff writer Richard Sims on deck. Hey, Richard.
Hey, Doug.
Kicking things off with news that Carnival Cruise Line is conducting a bit of an experiment.
Yeah, that's right, Doug. Carnival has long branded itself as America's most family-friendly line and boasts that they carry around 1 million children a year. Now, to someone like me who tries to avoid children, that's a boast that, doesn't really hit home. But for ages, people have suggested that Carnival try two things: a smoke-free cruise ship and a kid-free ship. Well, at least one of those things is coming to pass, at least temporarily, because it looks as if the November 1st sailing of the Carnival Magic will be a special adults-only sailing designed to cater specifically to casino players. Now, obviously, Carnival, like other cruise lines, makes a lot of money off of the casino. When they talk about onboard spend, that is one of the areas where they make a whole lot of money. So it makes sense that they might want to do things that would cater toward the gambling audience. And they already do a lot of things through their casino program. They do a lot of special sailings where, they might give you either a free room or discount or onboard money to spend in the casino. Anyway, in this case, they're doing a very specific adults-only sailing, which means the minimum age for those wanting to board will be 21. Now, it looks like 2 different letters have gone out to guests. One to those who already had a reservation, and everyone on their reservation is 21 or older. Then there's another letter that went to those with younger passengers saying, essentially, sorry, we're going to have to boot you from this sailing, and offering them either a refund or help in booking a different sailing. I saw the letter that went to casino guests, and the line that sort of stood out to me was this one. It reads, and I quote, "While our operational plans for the voyage have changed, it will still feature most of our brand-specific offerings." I find the word most there fascinating. I mean, obviously, they're not going to have kids clubs and things because, there are no any kids on board. But I'd love to know what else will be changed. And so maybe if you're booked on one of these special sailings, if you're booked on one of these adults-only sailings or the specific sailing on the Carnival Magic, we'd love to hear from you afterwards and hear what was different about this, what you might have noticed that was different compared to your typical Carnival Cruise Line sailing. Anyway, this appears to be a little bit of an experiment, so who knows what it could lead to, whether it's a one-off or maybe they decide to do adults-only sailings a few times a year. I don't really see them doing a year-round child-free ship. That just is so far removed from, Carnival's brand and what they do that it seems unlikely. But hey, you never know. Where money's concerned, and casinos make a lot of money, anything's possible.
Yeah, they say time is like a pendulum, right? Because when Carnival Paradise launched, because my grandma sailed it, it was a non-smoking ship, and she was recovering from lung cancer at the time. So she was like super stoked about doing it, but it only lasted 5 years because they couldn't fill the ship with it being non-smoking. But, fast forward to 30-something years later, I bet they could fill it at this point.
I bet they could too. I remember that. I mean, I remember the ship even had, if I'm not mistaken, like a big non-smoking, the old cigarette with a line through it, no smoking emblem on the side of it. Yeah. I mean, we're seeing the lines all try different experiments. So, maybe somewhere down the line, we see that too. It'll be interesting to see.
And what was supposed to be a celebratory cruise took a tragic turn in the Bahamas.
This is just nightmarish, to be honest. So Hannah Smith was on a cruise with her best friend earlier this month. They were celebrating their recent college graduation, and one day into the cruise, they went on an excursion, which took just a dreadful turn. It appears Hannah fell off the excursion boat and wound up being kind of caught in the ship's propeller and sliced up really badly. She was rushed to a hospital in Nassau where she has, as of this recording, undergone 6 different surgeries. Making it even more difficult is that Hannah's blood type is O negative, which is on the rare side. So they've been doing, blood drives and things like that to try and help get her the blood that she needs for these surgeries. There's also a GoFundMe page to help pay for what are sure to be incredibly high medical bills as a result. There's no word as to whether or not Hannah had travel insurance, but I mean, here's hoping she did, because that could certainly go a long way toward helping cover these expenses. Unfortunately, if there's one thing that I feel like we've sort of learned over the years, it's that younger cruisers, maybe, and this is true of young people as a whole, who, the world is their oyster and they're young and they don't see the threats out there that exist around every corner. And so a lot of younger cruisers just skip the idea of insurance, figuring they won't need it. But hopefully Hannah was not one of those people, and they will be able to get some help paying these medical bills.
Meanwhile, in Australia, the guy's little stunt got him in some hot water.
This is a case where I would love to talk to the guy involved and say, what the heck were you thinking, dude? We may never know the answer to that burning question, but here's what we do know. An unnamed 29-year-old allegedly tried to climb the mooring lines which were attached to the Carnival Adventure. The ship, which only a few short weeks ago was transferred from the now shuttered P&O Australia to Carnival Cruise Line, because they're both connected, all under the Carnival corporate flag. Anyway, the ship was docked in the Sydney harbor. A police boat maneuvered into position, and the mooring lines were basically lowered until the police could grab the guy. He was arrested, and there were several charges involving being in a restricted area. Who knows what this guy was thinking? Now, Doug, while we're on the topic of mooring lines, let's see if you know the answer to something I only recently learned. I'm sure you do, because, you're the salty old dog who has all the expert experience here.
Okay.
But when you look at a ship's mooring lines, they almost always have these triangular shaped pieces of metal on the bottom of them, about 5-10 feet up from where the line wraps around the dock.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what those are for?
Yeah, they're rat guards.
What does that mean?
They guard the ship against rats or other critters trying to make their way on board.
I was so shocked when I found that out. People always, you notice the mooring lines and you look at those and you're like, what the heck are those? Yeah, to prevent rats from climbing onto the ships. Didn't stop this guy, but it apparently is designed to stop rats. So there you go.
Such a wild video, because it was playing out in slow motion. It seems they slowly lowered the ropes down into the water. Then the police boat slowly apprehended him as they pulled up to him. It was like, yeah, this couldn't be any slower if it wanted to.
I wanted to speed the whole thing up and put the music from Benny Hill underneath it, because it was just so comical.
Well, next up, we have 2 cruise passengers who tried to bring a little something extra home from their Mexico trip.
A little something. Yeah, that's one way of putting it. Apparently, the 2 women were stopped by U.S. Customs and Border Protection when their ship returned to California. They were traveling with 10 pieces of luggage, which may have been a red flag right there, because upon searching those bags, the agents discovered 749 cartons of cigarettes. Now, my first question was, why 749 cartons? Why not 750? I mean, even the worst of packers, and I am a terrible, terrible packer, could have squeezed one more in there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, that's around 150,000 cigarettes, which were estimated to have a street value of $60,000 based on California prices. Now, the women were able to provide receipts for their purchases, but that doesn't matter. Basically, when you are coming back in, you are allowed 1 carton per person for personal use. And anything more than that, you have to declare to customs. And a haul this large would also be considered a commercial transaction, requiring a special permit from the Alcohol and Tobacco Tax and Trade Bureau. Now, I'll give you one guess what they didn't have. That's right, a special permit from the Alcohol and Tobacco Tax and Trade Bureau. So the cigarettes were seized and destroyed, There's no word, though, on what, if any, punishment was levied against the women, other than obviously losing the money they spent on 749 cartons of cigarettes.
Next up, a story that takes us back 5 years to a time we would all like to forget.
It was an awful time for a whole lot of people, but perhaps none so much as the crew members, many of whom found themselves stranded on ships that weren't sailing. They had no passengers on board, so, but they were there. They couldn't go home for various reasons. There was not only was there no sail orders in effect, but there were also a lot of countries were like, nope, we're not taking anybody in. Our borders are closed right now. So two such men, crew members, were stuck on a celebrity cruise ship during the shutdown. And at one point, they stole a bottle of whiskey from one of the bars. And as a result, they ended up being fired. But here's the catch. They were fired, but they couldn't leave. They were still stuck on this ship because they were from the Philippines, and the Philippines had a complete border shutdown. So they couldn't actually go anywhere. They later turned around and sued Celebrity, claiming false imprisonment and emotional distress. A lower court heard the case and dismissed the charges, saying, that there was nothing to them, but they appealed it, which sort of surprised me. And they took it to a higher court, which also upheld the lower court's dismissal. Basically, the court said that while Celebrity, maybe they didn't do everything perfectly under the circumstances, they handled everything the best they possibly could. And that once the no sail order was lifted, Celebrity worked with the CDC's very strict guidelines to get crew members back to their homes. I mean, I remember that. I remember when they started trying to repatriate everyone back, and they had to coordinate not only between ships, but between lines. I mean, it was a massive, very expensive effort. So, it's safe to say the cruise lines really did do everything they could for these people. But this lawsuit, yeah, it's over.
And ending the news this week on a little bit of a somber note.
Yeah, definitely. Princess Cruises is mourning the sudden death of Captain Bartolome, who passed away unexpectedly on board the Diamond Princess early on May 19th. The ship was docked in Taiwan. The 52-year-old captain was at the helm of a 19-night sailing that was going to Japan and Korea, Taiwan, China, when a medical emergency occurred early in the morning. Apparently, passengers were awakened about 2 a.m. by a shipwide medical alert, and the next morning they were informed that the captain had passed away. They were assured that, there was a succession in place and that everything would continue smoothly, but that their captain had unfortunately passed away. He was originally from Italy and resided in British Columbia, and he had spent the last 18 seasons cruising Alaska. He is said to have been known for his calm demeanor, strong leadership, and passion for the sea. So we are definitely sending our thoughts out to his family and to the extended cruise family that we make out there in the world. When so many of us end up sailing the same ships or the same lines over and over. And so there are captains and crew members who we develop personal relationships with. So it's not surprising that Facebook and other social media sites have been sort of flooded by former passengers who have sailed under the captain, sharing their memories, sharing photos, and really feeling the loss themselves almost as much as the Princess Cruise Line family.
All right. Well, we'll wrap it up here. Staff writer Richard Sims, as always, thank you, my friend.
As always, thanks for having me.
The world is constantly changing. Your place for news is still the same. Online and on demand at cruiseradio.net.
A big question we get at Cruise Radio is, how do I know if I need trip insurance? Simple answer. If you're getting on a plane, taking a road trip, or getting on a cruise ship, you need to have travel insurance. Hey, it's Doug Parker from my friends at tripinsurance.com. Not only does tripinsurance.com protect your vacation investment, but it also gives you peace of mind in case anything were to go wrong on your trip. How do they do it? They offer 3 different types of trip insurance policies. Good, better, and best. One policy for every vacation budget. But it doesn't just stop there. They're up to 40% lower when you shop around on other comparison sites. Plus, tripinsurance.com offers 24-hour customer support before, during, and after your trip. online claims assistance, and travel alerts to let you know what's going on at your destination. But find out for yourself. Check out tripinsurance.com.
Have a tip or a lead on a news story? Let us know. Email tips@cruiseradio.net.
Matt and his wife just returned from a 3-night cruise from Port Everglades on Celebrity Silhouette, and he joins us on the line to talk about it. How you doing, Matt?
Hey, Doug. How's it going, man?
Good, man. Good to talk to you again, and excited to hear about Silhouette here on a little short cruise. You normally don't take these short cruises, do you?
You know what, Doug? It's funny you mentioned that, and I always say this. I think this is my 4th or 5th review with you, and I always say this every time I come on with you. Thank you for everything that you and your staff and Richard and everyone does, keeping us enlightened in the industry. And you guys make cruise news so much fun. Thank you for all the work that you do in the industry. But yeah, Doug, it's becoming more prevalent to do these shorter cruises, particularly as more and more ships debut. The question, I guess, with the lines such as Celebrity and then all of your mainstream lines, whether it be Royal or whether it be, Carnival, MSC, Norwegian, whatever, is, what do they do, or how do they position these ships? Where do they go? Those kinds of things. And so these shorter cruises have been very convenient for people like myself and people like my wife who do not get a lot of time off. I work in government and my wife works in education, and she gets a little bit more time off than I do. But it's just so much easier living here in Florida. And of course, we live in the Tampa area to drive or fly somewhere else, in the state or right here in Tampa to take one of these shorter cruises. And the other thing that I love about it, Doug, is obviously they're very, people are talking about the rise in the cost of cruising with supply and demand. They're actually really inexpensive. And you don't say that a lot with a line like Celebrity, which is considered obviously a step up, a Royal sort of premium line, if you will, going, directly against the likes of Virgin and kind of that, category. And so Celebrity actually, Doug, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, this would probably take more research on maybe my end. I'm sure off your head. They didn't have a lot of short cruises until it might have even been post-pandemic, or maybe they got into that occasionally before the pandemic, but it hadn't have been that long. So when I saw that they were positioning a lot of the Solstice class ships, around some of the, smaller ports in Florida, such as Tampa or Canaveral or places like that, I said, man, that's interesting. I'll have to go check it back out.
Yeah, Celebrity's never really been a short cruise line until the last few years here. But with more new ships and, of course, softening in some European markets, more ships for us here in North America.
I remember Celebrity did on one of the Solstice class ships every year, they would do a Mardi Gras cruise. And I'm not talking about Carnival Mardi Gras. I'm talking about during Mardi Gras in New Orleans, they would do a cruise to nowhere for 3 nights or something in the middle of the Gulf, or go across to Cancun, or I forgot how it worked, but it was the only time they would do some of these shorter cruises. And it's a line that I actually love, Doug. It's a line that I originally started cruising with my father in 2009. I was, I think, a sophomore at LSU at the time, and we took one of the MSC ships, which was one of the first time that they sailed out of the U.S. In the U.S., pardon me, from Florida. And it was terrible. It was MST's come a long way, but I know that's a different show. But then Dad and I started taking the Solstice class ships all throughout the 2010s, and we took every single one of them, that exists, including multiple times on the Equinox, multiple times on the Reflection. And so, but it had been since 2017 that I had actually been on a Solstice class ship for Celebrity. And so I knew that this ship, I knew the Silhouette had been, refitted, and that they had sort of modernized it a little bit. And I was very anxious and kind of interested to see what it looked like, compared to what I remember in the mid 2000s, especially after sailing some of the Edge class ships.
Yeah, no, 100%. Let's jump on board and talk about this ship then. So you make your way, you're in the Tampa area, and you get over to Port Everglades. First off, embarkation, how was it? How long did it take from the curb to the ship?
Okay, I'll get right to that. We flew. This is strange considering that, Lauderdale is only a 3.5 hour drive from Tampa. We actually flew the Pink Airline Silver Airways over for like $25 from Tampa to Lauderdale. I wish I could have that one back, brother. Anyway, that we should have driven. But anyway, we got there the night before. We originally had reservations at a pretty nice restaurant there in Lauderdale. That got scrapped because of a 5-hour delay on Silver Airways part. So yeah, we could have driven in less time. But we get to Lauderdale. We spent the night there at a Hilton that was relatively near the cruise port, probably about, 10, 15 minutes away. And Doug, I had no idea what the hell. It's been a long time since I've sailed out of Everglades. Normally we sail out of Miami or obviously, as I've mentioned, Tampa or over across at Canaveral. But it's been, since 17 since I had sailed out of Lauderdale, Everglades. And man, oh man, the traffic, the construction, it was an absolute nightmare. The worst traffic into a port I've ever had. The Uber driver, very nice gentleman, he even said, look, I don't know what's going on with the construction, but he says it's been bad the last couple of weeks. And so we left our hotel. It should have taken about 12 minutes to get to the port. We got about, I would say, within 5 minutes of the port, and then it took us over an hour from that point to get finally into the port area. And they shrunk it down to one lane. And then they checked, once we got through like the gates, they checked our Uber driver's ID, then checked my wife and I's ID and verified that we had passage on a ship. Mm-hmm. Very weird. I mean, we felt like we were, getting on a ship that would be for the FBI or so. It was crazy, man. Once we got out of the Uber and got everything through, probably 20 minutes. Not bad at all.
Once you get on the ship, it's 20 minutes. You've mentioned you've done all of these before. So what was your impressions this time around? And for someone who may not be familiar with the Solstice class ship, like what can they expect when they embark?
I love Celebrity because I've always found it to be a real modern line. I think a lot of people who are young professionals, and I understand that given its price tag, especially for the Edge class ships, especially when you're taking a week-long cruise or more, it's going to skew older because it is more on the expensive side typically. Even back during the Solstice class ship, when they were the newest, greatest ships in the mid-2000s, I always found Celebrity to be cool, kind of almost this James Bondish kind of theme to it, to where people tended to dress up a little bit more. It was going to be more adults, less children. I always found that kind of with the Solstice class ships. And in terms of their interiors, I think we were getting the best of both worlds. Unlike, let's say, like a Norwegian ship, no disrespect to NCL. I love a lot of different lines, but NCL has roller coasters and water parks. And I mean, it's like every space on the deck is devoted to something. And it really cuts down on the pool deck and kind of the enjoyment of sitting by a pool, having a drink and being in the middle of the Caribbean. Mm-hmm. And the Celebrity ships tend to almost get that perfect. It's a wide open deck, but you've got the lawn club, which is a really cool feature that I still think is so unique with the real grass up there. But it's just, there's so much space. And it's just real modern. That's what I would keep saying about it. And the refit that they've done, and I know we'll get into the particulars with that, but the refit that they've done really kind of tried to make it as Edge class from an interior standpoint as they possibly could. A lot of the kind of neutral tones and a lot of the very kind of, sleek, kind of sexy amenities and furniture and decor and stuff like that. And man, they hammered it. I thought it looked like a new ship on the inside.
being a short cruise, did you splurge on the balcony like you normally do?
No. We've got a big cruise coming up later in the year that I'm sure you and I'll talk about at some point. But we went with an interior. I do have some status in celebrity. Kind of made a little bit of a pitch at going with the balcony. Doug, I think I've said this when we've taken an interior before. Now, most of the time we're going to be balcony, but we were just looking to kind of get away. You have to understand, we kind of are the types that we're only using the stateroom for like 3 different things: to sleep, to get dressed, and alone time. Other than that, we're out and about on the ship, enjoying ourselves, having drinks or partying or enjoying entertainment, enjoying restaurants, whatever the case is. We're just not going to be the types that spend a lot of time in the stateroom. It was fine. It was actually, we had, because of, I guess, my status, we had what was, I guess, referred to as a grand interior. I'm not sure if that's the actual category size, but it was a little bit bigger than your standard interior. And it was on one of we were on deck 9, and we were kind of, I would say, more forward on the ship. And we were under staterooms and on top of staterooms, so very quiet. Probably one of the most quiet staterooms that I can ever remember. I mean, we didn't hear anything the entire time, we were in our room. They've modernized everything. The Solstice class ships used to have kind of those like hotel red carpets that were real popular, I guess, in the 90s and 2000s. They've updated all of that again to kind of make it more Edge class like with neutral tones, put in a huge, plasma TV or a big screen TV in there. And the bathroom was decent, not great. The only thing that I would say that I'm surprised after the refit that was a little weak in the room was they did not put the USBCs or the USBs by the bed. They're still all over on the side, circa, again, 90s, 2000s cruising, where you've got like kind of a strip of plugs that's over there right by the bathroom. And that's really kind of all you get. So that was one of the, I guess, few complaints about the cabin. But other than that, everything was perfect.
Hearing the name Grand Interior makes it sound pretty large. Was it bigger than your typical interior stateroom?
No, it was bigger. It was bigger. We saw, the only reason I know that is so, like, I guess when we were on the website, originally booking this, it had like, do you want like a guaranteed interior? And it was like from whatever square feet. I'm just doing this off the top of my head. From 189 square feet to 285 square feet. I think we got the one that was 285 because we walked in, we had the sofa. It looked like it had a bigger closet. And then when we were walking one day to somewhere on the ship, we passed another interior room, and someone was, one of the stateroom attendants was cleaning. And Michaela looked in, and I kind of looked in above her, and we said, man, that interior room's tiny. And so, like I said, I think we had a little bit of a step up somehow.
Okay, fair enough. How was the food in the Ocean View Cafe, and did it ever feel too crowded at times?
The food was very good for a cruise buffet. And again, Michaela and I, that's never going to be our number one go-to. We're more dining room people and specialty restaurants all the way. We do like to utilize the buffet if we somehow wake up late. Obviously for breakfast, occasionally we'll grab lunch in there if we've, whether we've got a late excursion or something like that. But typically we're not the biggest buffet people. But I found the variety the best that I've seen in a post-pandemic cruising world. And we've taken, I think this was maybe number 6 or number 7 for us since the restart. Probably number 6. And we've been on, I guess, 3 different lines now. And you can tell that they've, and I know that you and Richard have covered it extensively, that all of the lines have kind of cut back on variety and kind of streamlined a few things and things like that. I found it very, they still were allowing you to get steak in the buffet, which is becoming more and more rare. They still had multiple carving stations. I'm a big, meat eater, big guy. And so they still had multiple carving stations everywhere. I found it about as good of a buffet as you're going to find in a post-pandemic world. So pretty good for the Ocean View Cafe. Yeah.
And outside, if I'm not mistaken, on the Ocean View, you can also dine like just aft of that, right? Like sit outside overlooking the water in the buffet, or is that another ship I'm thinking of?
That is 100% correct with all the Solstice class ships. They do have a back area that you can walk outside and eat, and that's actually right under the Sunset Bar, if memory serves me correct. And again, it's an excellent ship for being outside. They nailed that when they designed it, I guess in the mid 2000s or early 2000s. They nailed that design on having so many outdoor spaces that people can do normal things, not just again a goat cart track or a roller coaster or whatever the case is. It's places where you can have a good meal and be outside and enjoy yourself, which are kind of disappearing a lot on cruises now, Doug, especially the newer ones.
Yeah, 100%. As far as the main dining room on this one, what time dining did you have, and what did you think of the food in there?
We had any time, and the food was generally pretty good. I'm not going to tell you that anything blew us away, but it was pretty good. Royal / Celebrity has, which my wife will order multiple of, still does escargot. So my wife, every meal, she would get 2 orders of escargot before she would actually get her salad, followed by her entree. And so as long as she can have that, I literally think she is like the biggest Royal Caribbean / Celebrity fan because she can do that. But the food was mostly solid, pretty good. Again, I'm not going to tell you anything was out of this world, but nothing was poor, nothing was average. Everything was a solid. The staff was very attentive. Of course, my wife asked the 2 nights that we ate in the main dining room. My wife asked if we could be by the window. They accommodated us both times. There's just a level of professionalism with Celebrity, again, that you're going to notice the difference on from sailing, the mainstream lines as opposed to doing a step up like a premium cruise line.
Mm-hmm. Outside of the main dining room and outside of the buffet area, any kind of maybe grab and goes or poolside dining, maybe a specialty you hit up for lunch or dinner?
Yeah, I tell you, we really enjoyed, and I totally had forgotten about this, again, being, I guess now 8 years since I had been on a Solstice class ship. I forgot that they still had the Mass Grill, which is up by the pool area, which is a, burger and hot dog, and they've got fries and just, kind of some cool grilling items that they flame broil right there in front of you. And you want to talk about a great idea when you're out at the pool and you don't have to, fully get dressed to go all the way, schlup back into the buffet and, mess around with doing all that and hoping that no one steals your deck chair, or that the pool attendant gets mad because you left the towel there or something. That's there for you to just go grab, and you can be back at your chair in 5 to 7 minutes. Very good, very delicious. As far as grab and go, Doug, nothing is sticking out to me. I'm sure there were some things there in and around that you could do. And of course, with Celebrity, as long as you have a drink package, you can go. They've got the specialty coffee place. It's a very Italian sounding Il something that's on one of the interior decks, and you can go there, and it's totally free. You can get anything you want, again, as long as you have a drink package. And then I heard later on, I'm not 100% sure if this is true or not, I heard you did not need the drink package that was included in your fare. I would find that hard to believe, and I thought I remember having to give my stateroom card for that. But anyway, that was great and absolutely delicious. We hit that up a lot. And then we did go to one specialty restaurant the final night of the cruise. We went to the Tuscan Grill, which is all the way at the back of the ship. Absolutely beautiful setting. You're at the back windows of the ship, and Doug, it might be one of the best price specialty meals that you're going to get at sea, because it's one of the few that I've ever seen. And maybe they do if you try to go ridiculously, I guess, excessive. Mm-hmm. But the waitress who came out, very, very nice, lovely person, she just said, we said, okay, so how does it work? Because I had purchased a specialty dining, I guess, package to do the Tuscan grill because I remember it being good back in my Solstice class days.
Mm-hmm.
And and Michaela loves Italian food, although it does have a lot more than Italian. And so we were sitting there, and so I said, "Okay, do we get one of each, or how does it work?" And she goes, "Order whatever you want, as much as you want." And we said, "Really?" And she goes, "Yeah, order whatever you want, as much as you want." And we said, "Well, that's nice of you to do." And she goes, No, that's how it works. Order whatever you want, as much as you want." So we ordered, 2 appetizers apiece, and I think I got 2 entrees, and my wife got 2 desserts. And I mean, we pigged out and took advantage of it.
Nice.
And it was only like $70 a person.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what was. Maybe she was going to get off the ship that day. I have no idea. But it was, like I said, man, it was the best specialty restaurant that I think I've ever had at sea. It was fantastic.
Yeah, that's awesome. You can't. I've had dinner back there a couple of times, and you're right. You can't beat those views, especially if it's like a sunset time.
Yes, and that's exactly what we timed it perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
They know what they're doing.
Yeah.
I mean, whenever you go to a specialty restaurant, especially when it's one of the nicer ones, usually you got the A staff in there, the A+ staff who is known for being good. And man, oh man, it was just something special. We were both dressed up, which we like to do from time to time. Kind of just another, although it's not even close to being our anniversary, you're just kind of treating it kind of like that. Doug, what's so great about a 3-night cruise on a line like Celebrity, they don't make it feel like a 3-night cruise. I'm black card or the highest status or whatever with MSC. When you get on a 3-night cruise, again, not to pick on them, but I will. When you get on a 3-night cruise with MSC or with NCL or a line like that, you feel like you're not necessarily getting the A+ staff or the A+ experience. It's kind of get you in, okay, have fun, drink a lot, get you out. Celebrity makes you feel like you're going to be on the ship for 2 weeks.
Can you get by with nice jeans and a polo on Celebrity, or do they want you, like on formal night or whatever they're calling it these days, do they want you to wear like a nice button down and a tie and a sports jacket maybe?
No, I think that, and I was surprised at that. I think that like most lines, Celebrity has backed off of that quite a bit. And and maybe it's different, Doug, and I have not been on a week-long Celebrity cruise since I sailed Celebrity Edge in 2019. So it's been a minute since I've been on one of their week-long cruises on, one of their newest ships. We are sailing the cruise that we're taking later this year is a week-long cruise on the Beyond. So we're very much, the Excel. And so we're very much looking forward to that. But they call it, I think, evening chic is the term that they put on the itinerary, or the term that they put on the program, that's put in the stateroom. A lot of people were treating it like I did. I wore like a white linen jacket just to be very, nautical with a shirt and some slacks. The shirt was untucked, and I, was wearing loafers without socks. So, and you saw a lot of people. If it was one thing that I noticed, it was a lot more younger people on this sailing than typically probably sails Celebrity. Again, not that Celebrity skews as old as like Holland America, but Celebrity definitely, because of its price tag, is going to be a little bit more baby boomerish. But yeah, most people on the evening chic night, I would say we're definitely doing the pants thing from a guy's perspective, and maybe more of kind of the sundress / I guess cocktail dress, if I'm terming it correctly, for the ladies. And so that's kind of what you mostly saw. I saw very few like ties and things of that nature.
So as far as the entertainment on this 3-night cruise, it wasn't a long cruise, but how was the entertainment?
It was pretty good. Again, nothing that I thought was like out of this world, but again, for a 3-night cruise, not bad at all. We had a comedian who was hilarious. And of course, I forget his name. I'm sure he's going to, remember that he was on. He probably listens to your show and is going to remember that he was, on that sailing. And of course, this guy can't remember my name. He was hilarious. And he joked about it. He was like, did you guys take a look at this itinerary before you selected it? He goes, you're sailing from Florida and you're going to Florida. And he just kind of had this, kind of, I guess, self-deprecating humor and joked with the audience that he's like, man, this ship isn't going far at all. He's like, I was in my stateroom just now and I locked my car back on shore, and he just had it. It was perfect kind of going through the, that. And it was, I mean, I know we'll talk about the port stops here in a second, but this itinerary, I mean, it was about as, forgive me to the two places, but about as weak as it gets.
Yeah.
People did this as a weekend, a long weekend cruise to have a blast and be on a celebrity ship. We went and saw him. We then, the other night that we saw, we missed one of the nights of entertainment. We just decided to kind of treat it as a party. But one of the other nights was some sort of musical show, to where they did like, kind of a rock show with the celebrity dancers and stuff like that. And they had Celebrity does a good job. And I know like Virgin does a good job at this. And the other lines are kind of coming along and doing a better job at it. In addition to the usual like trivia or love and marriage games or things like that, Celebrity does like a real like dirty game show kind of thing. Again, more for your 20s, 30s, 40s crowd. In one of their kind of side theaters. I'm not sure I think it's called like the Celebrity Activities Center or something like that. And it's off to the side of the theater, kind of near the theater. And they do a lot of like, back in the day, seriously, this was like in 2013, 2014, they used to have a comedian in there and they would do burlesque.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess they got rid of the burlesque.
Yeah.
And now they are doing like a very raunchy trivia or game shows or whatever. And we would go pop in there late. I'm talking, sometimes at 1 a.m. And they would have shows going on and they were hilarious. Very kind of a cool touch.
How about around the ship as far as maybe like a roving band that may have caught your ear that you kind of return to every night or so?
Yeah, not so much that. They did have a lot of live music around the ship. I tell you what, those Solstice class ships have a lot of, like I said, kind of smaller entertainment venues.
Mm-hmm.
And then I forgot that over by, and we didn't find this until the last night. We were kind of PO'd at ourselves that we didn't, I guess, explore that area a little bit more in the ship. But I forgot that like Celebrity back still on those Solstice class ships near the specialty restaurants, which are towards the aft of the ship, as we were talking about it earlier, they have like their own version of like the shooter bar. But of course, it's not called that. And it's just a beautiful setup. And it seems like it's very underutilized because if you're not purposefully going there, you really wouldn't know about it. So that was something we wish we would have spent some more time at. And in addition to that, like, for instance, they're now doing the silent disco over in their little nightclub, which is, again, kind of over by the casino / where the shops are.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you kind of see my trend here, there's a lot of kind of rooms that still can fit a lot of people, that they can have some decent size activities without it being like 1,000 people, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
But then one of the things that I still love that they have that are also kind of disappearing from more of your, modern ships that are debuting, every year now, is they still have the big disco up top, which is, above the pool deck, where I'm serious. I mean, damn near half the people on the ship could fit in that thing. It's so big.
Sea days, how were they with crowds and congestion? You mentioned you may have seen 10 kids the entire cruise, but as far as adults, so did things get crowded on sea days around the pool or the buffet or anything?
They did, but they do a great job at managing it. And the other thing that is awesome about these Solstice class ships with Celebrity, you do have a back pool deck, as I mentioned, that's over there by the Sunset Bar. MSC on a couple of their different classes of ships has started to do that, where you've got a Sunset Bar and they've got kind of a big, pool deck back there. Not as big as the main pool deck, obviously, but you get a big pool deck that kind of relieves some of that congestion. But you also have to remember, Doug, you get that lawn club up there. And I'm not talking about the Lawn Club Grill, which is also up there, but you have the Lawn Club up there. And a lot of people, they've put deck chairs all around that, not the grass, but on the side, where the grass stops. They put lawn chairs or deck chairs, pardon me, all along that. So you've got multiple decks that have, deck chairs on them. And so, I mean, am I going to tell you that, that everybody got the exact seat that they wanted? No, but I did not find it all that crowded at all. And the ship was full, I asked.
Gotcha. As far as the casino, with the actually, I would usually would ask about the smoke situation, but as far as the casino, Celebrity doesn't have smoking casinos any longer, do they?
If they did, I sure didn't notice.
Okay.
I definitely did not notice. We used. I thought about you on this cruise. I want you to know that, okay? Because we had some credit. Neither one of my wife or I are gamblers. Okay, not really the biggest gamers on earth. I mean, I'll sports bet here and there, but we did have some sort of credit that ended up in our room, and maybe they give it to everybody. I have no idea. I think it was like $50 to play in the casino for each of us, and we both went and spent time at the Buffalo Watch just because I remember you saying something, and I've been to Vegas and I've been to Atlantic City, and I'm from New Orleans, and so I've certainly spent time in casinos, but I couldn't tell you, what machine is better than the other. So I just remember hearing the Buffalo, right back in the back of my head, and I'm like, I know what we're playing, Michaela. And so we went and played, and of course we lost every penny of those credits. But anyway.
As far as your ports of call, so you leave Port Everglades, you went to Key West and Nassau. So what was the highlight of Key West? And, you're in Florida now. Have you gone down to the Keys aside from a ship?
No, I haven't gone down to the Keys. I've been in Florida for about 4 years now, but we've never done. And that's another thing that's easy to do from Tampa. You can take a very inexpensive, puddle jumper kind of flight down to Key West very easily. First of all, I love Key West. It is almost like a tropical, kind of version of New Orleans, or however you want to, compare it. And I love the history and all those kinds of things. The biggest highlight, though, was not floating away, because it was the worst weather I've ever had on cruising ever in the 31 that I've taken. We got out. We did it. We went and did the key lime pie. We did some key lime pie shots. We got some gear. My wife loves local jewelry, so she enjoyed the shops and everything like that. But man, oh man, we got back, and this was a nice touch. It almost reminded me of an Alaskan cruise. Nice. This was a nice touch by Celebrity. They had warm towels. Not that it was cold. I mean, you're in Florida, and at the time it was late March, early April. Again, it wasn't chilly, but they had huge warm towels waiting on people because everybody returning back to the ship was just so. But Key West is awesome. I'm happy. They always seem like they're recovering from something down there. I'm happy it hasn't lost its charm. The art is some of the best in the U.S. It's just a cool place, man, with cool people, and we had a good time for what it was. The next day in Nassau, we did something very different. People love the dog on Nassau. First of all, love the new port area. I know that you guys have talked about that on the show, and you've had other people review about how much nicer that port area is now in Nassau. And credit Nassau. I think that thing was under construction for the last 87 years. So I'm happy that it finally got done. People in Nassau couldn't be nicer. The Bohemian people are great people, and love that they're our neighbors here in Florida. We did something different, though. We wanted to take advantage of our time in Nassau. And as opposed to the weather in Key West the day before, the day in Nassau was perfect. Like 80 degrees, not a cloud in the sky, everything you want from a Caribbean day. So we decided, instead of doing like Junkanoo Beach or something like that, which we have done what seemed like hundreds of times before, and we love the beach. We go here in Florida all the time. We decided to go to that chocolate factory over there. I forget the name of it off the top of my head, but it was like $25 a person. This was a thigh excursion. We didn't do it through the cruise line, which is rare for us. Normally, we like the assurance, but we know Nassau so well. We said, man, if we spend too much time on Nassau and can't find to get back on the ship, we deserve to be left. But anyway, we walked over to, it was probably about a 15 to 20-minute walk. Both of us are fairly fit, so I mean, it wasn't that big of a deal at all. But we walked over to this chocolate factory, and they showed us how they make the different kinds of, how the cocoa is brought in and how they turn it into, whether it's going to be milk chocolate or dark chocolate or, things of that nature. If they're going to make it for some type of liqueur, and put it in like a chocolate rum or things like that. And it was connected to this historic hotel that, I swear, Doug, we walk and the guy, it wasn't time for our tour yet. And the guy, they gave us a few drinks over at this hotel. And the guy said, hey, yeah, go, feel free to explore the grounds. It's very pretty. And so it's kind of jungle looking in the back.
Oh, the Great
And
Cliff.
so we walk out. The Great Cliff.
Yep.
That's it.
Yeah.
Good. Very good. We walked that there, and I obviously you're familiar with it. We walked that there, and I mean, it looks like it's something out of Gatsby.
Mm-hmm.
It's or Jamie Bond. Which I know, of course, Sean Connery, and they've done several different James Bond movies in the Bahamas. But we walked back there, and you want to talk about Instagrammable.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's one of the prettiest pool settings I've ever seen, and no one was there. Literally nobody but us. That was very cool. And then, Doug, we just walked a ways down to the rum cake factory place, got some rum cake, and kicked around the port a little bit, and then got back on the ship and spent the rest of the day kind of like a sea day.
Well spent 2 days, it sounds like, despite the thunderstorm there in Key West. So back-to-back port action. You make your way back to Port Everglades. How was your debark?
Debark was a hell of a lot smoother. Thank goodness. We look for a 3-night cruise. We both took the carry-on things, and I'm a big guy, so sometimes I'm 6'5", 250, 260 pounds. So my clothing takes up a lot more space than my wife's clothing, because my wife is quite petite. But we both did the carry-on thing, and were easily able to carry off. Got in an Uber, and we're back at the airport, maybe within 30 minutes or so of getting off the ship. Love the facial recognition. I almost think that should be a requirement now at every port. It just makes things so much easier. Man, Everglades, I understand that we've all got to, do construction. And if you're not building, I guess you're not improving. They got to work on this traffic situation, brother.
Well, as we wrap things up here and put a bow on this, let's talk about any first-time tips you may have to offer someone considering sailing. We won't just say Celebrity Silhouette, a Solstice-class ship.
Man, they've done a great job at refurbing them. Doug, maybe you can speak to this. I'm not sure if all of them, in there, 6 Solstice-class ships? I'm not sure if all of them have been completely refurbed, but I think most of them have. Mm-hmm. If they haven't been refurbed, I think maybe those 1 or 2 are probably over in Europe or Asia or wherever the case is. They're great. I mean, they probably one of the best conditioned ships. That was, I think, Silhouette came out in 2012. Does that sound about right, Doug? So you're talking about
one of those years. I think Reflection came out in 2012. So I think maybe the year before that or so.
So let's just even say it was 2010. So you're talking, a 15-year-old ship. Okay, you can't tell this thing's 15 years old at all. Not a bit. They really did a good job at refurbing it. And like I said, I've used this term a couple of times in the review. They've tried to kind of edge class the ship, at least with the interiors. Mm-hmm. The Martini bar looks very similar now to what the Martini bar looks like on Edge and Apex and Beyond and so on. And man, they still have it. They have not cut back on customer service. Our rooms were cleaned twice a day. That's the first time that's happened since I've been on a ship post-pandemic. I don't know if you've experienced that on one of your cruises, but it doesn't happen often anymore, Doug. Especially on the mainstream lines. So that was refreshing. They still put the chocolate on the pillow. It's just the little things, man. That's why they're so good. And Royal, in my opinion, and we're big Royal, we like the Royal family. Royal is still kind of our favorite mainstream line. And so you add that, and then you take a step up with their, cousin line, Celebrity. It adds to the experience, and it's still got that cool factor. I don't know how else to describe it besides that you can be 25 or you can be 65 on Celebrity, and you're still going to think things are kind of, yeah, man, this is kind of it. This is kind of cool. That's kind of the best way I would describe it.
What was the biggest highlight of this cruise for y'all?
The biggest highlight was, first of all, just being able to do Celebrity as a short cruise. Again, Doug, it's something that's very convenient for a lot of us who live here in the state of Florida to be able to, within driving distance, hop on a very cool ship for a very inexpensive price. And again, like you and I were talking about earlier, that used to kind of be only for Carnival. Maybe NCL. But then I think Royal started getting into the mix on these shorter cruises. And Doug, again, my wife and I do pretty well, but we also live in a very expensive part of the country. And so we're looking for deals sometimes. Yeah. And the fact that what we paid, and I'm not going to give you the actual figure here, but for what we paid to sail a Celebrity ship, even though we went with interior, but I mean, we splurged on a premium drink package. I mean, it was a steal. It really was. And so definitely keep your eyes out, your eyes peeled on the websites. You're going to see as they keep coming out, Doug, and they don't slow down with newer and grander and more incredible ships by what seems like, 5 or 6 every year now. You're going to see great ships that are not at the top of the pecking order anymore, but are still really fun to sail and really have that cool factor and are really just, well positioned and are going to become, ships that sail 3-day, 4-day itineraries. And man, there's some deals to be had. So that was really cool, just getting to do this, a short cruise on Celebrity.
In closing here, Matt, your final thoughts of Celebrity Silhouette.
For a 15-year-old ship or thereabouts, it's absolutely incredible. Great job again by Celebrity on the refit. I really think that these Solstice class ships are really, again, well positioned to have a lot more life left in them to do these kinds of short sailings, or even if they do go on some itineraries for a week long or longer. Final thought would be definitely we're happy we did this. We would easily do this again. My only thing, Doug, is although we love the Bahamas, we love Key West, I hope, out of these 3-night cruises, and I know that they can do a lot more with a 4th night, I really do hope they continue to kind of, expand on trying to do a few more different kinds of ports than to just do the Bahamas. Do know that there's like a 4-night sailing on a couple of different lines out of Tampa that goes to Cozumel, and they can get down there. That's the only port stop, and then it comes back. But I do hope these shorter cruises, I don't know if they can make the ships any faster, but I'd love if they can squeeze in different itineraries here and there. But it was a great cruise, man, and we'd easily do it again.
We've been talking with Matt about his 3-night sailing aboard Celebrity Silhouette. As always, my friend, great talking to you, man, and hope to catch you next time. Thanks for sharing this.
You take care, Doug.
All right, Dougie, let's see what we got for you, buddy. Cruise Radio is produced at the tripinsurance.com studios in Jacksonville, Florida. Get cruise news, ship reviews, and money-saving tips every Thursday on Cruise Radio. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the show. If you want to help spread the word, give Cruise Radio a 5-star review. Find Cruise Radio where you listen to your favorite podcast or online at cruiseradio.net. I'm your announcer,